Greetings, folks. Iolair here. I am very excited to do this review for you. I think many of you know that I consider myself a cruiser main with a nearly pathological preference for the German cruisers. So you can imagine the excitement I had this past Wednesday, April 1st, when I logged into the World of Warships website and saw that the brand new premium tier-VIII German light cruiser Mainz went on sale in the premium shop. And now I know many in the community are probably looking forward more to some of the other upcoming premium German ships like the Odin, the Aegir, the Siegfried. But for me, as a cruiser main, this is the ship that I was looking forward to the most, and I am thrilled to have added her to my port. So I'm going to do kind of a multi-part review here. The first part will go do some gameplay. This is actually the first match I had in her. This is a tier 10 epicenter match on Tears of the Desert. I'll include a snippet after this match of some gameplay from the third battle I had, demonstrating her performance as a destroyer hunter killer. And then I'll go over to the port where I'll go into a little more detail around some of her characteristics and my build. So what can we talk about the Mainz? So first, her namesake. She is named for the city of Mainz, which is the capital of the Rhineland in west central Germany. I have a personal connection with this city in that my wife, she studied German literature as a graduate student at the Johannes Gutenberg Institute in Mainz, and Mainz is very close to the area of southern Hessen where my mother-in-law was born and raised. So a little bit of our personal background on me and connection that I have with the city as the namesake for the ship. So general characteristics of the ship and what I think you should expect of her. So she is based off of the Hipper hull. I think most people know this. She's actually more closely aligned to the Prinz Eugen with that slight longer sort of curved bow called the Atlantic bow. So she will have the same sort of dimensions and characteristics as the Prinz Eugen, a little less like the Hipper. Obviously, her main difference is that she's a light cruiser, so she fires 12 rifles, 150 millimeter rounds every 6 seconds, and that's a big difference from obviously the Hipper and the Prinz Eugen. But she does carry many of the same characteristics common to her two, I'll call cousin tier-VIII German cruisers. She has a pretty big health pool. She's definitely in the top half of tier-VIII cruisers. She's somewhat less than the Hipper and the Prinz Eugen. She has quick turrets. You will not need expert marksman for this ship. She matches the Nuremberg and Königsberg as having the highest AP Alpha light cruiser shells in the game. But keep in mind that being typical German AP, the penetration angles are pretty finicky, so you really need to have pretty flat broadsides in order for it to be really effective. She does obviously receive the 1/4 penetration buff on the HE shells like other German cruisers, so she does not require IFHE. In fact, it would be a mistake to invest in that, in my opinion. But as is the case with other German cruisers, she has the poorest alpha at caliber for the HE shells. So while you will see far fewer shatters generally, you will also notice that the alpha is not very high. She has competent AA. In fact, she's the strongest of the three tier-VIII German cruisers. Most notably, her continuous AA is about 30% better than both the Hipper and the Prinz Eugen. The flak burst damage is the same. She is a big ship, so this is one of the drawbacks of the tier-VIII German cruisers. These are large vessels. They are easy to hit at range because of their size. They have pretty mediocre maneuverability. They are the slowest of the cruisers at their tier. Their rudders and their turning circles are better than the Soviets, but weaker than pretty much every other nation. So they have some limitations in terms of their maneuverability and so on. So you're going to be spending a lot of time in long-range gunnery like I'm doing here with the Sasasho. Now, I didn't call out earlier that I did sink the gearing that ended up grounding himself. So that was my first kill of the match. So she has a lot of the same characteristics in terms of her dimensions and performance, other than her gun systems, and I'll talk about her armor and her torpedoes, where there are some differences as well. Now let's get to the armor. So she is not going to be as tanky as the Hipper, and definitely not as tanky as the Prinz Eugen. The Prinz Eugen and the Hipper received 27 millimeter bows and upper armor plates. This allows them to bounce the 380 and 381 millimeter shells, AP shells fired by a lot of battleships at mid and upper tiers. The Mainz does not have that benefit. She has a 25 millimeter bow. She has a 25 millimeter upper armor plate. And again, when we go back to port, I'll show you what that looks like. That means that you're not going to be able to bow tank those AP shells. And so you're going to spend, I think if you're going to play this ship and draw a comparison with the other tier 8 German cruisers, you're going to be spending a lot more time in long-range gunnery and less time in some of those close combat situations that you can be more comfortable with in the Hipper and definitely the Prinz Eugen. The Prinz Eugen does have sort of a little bit of a battleship moniker for her. She has very good armor for a cruiser. She is the frankly, among the sturdiest cruisers in the game. But one point I should make is that the Mainz does carry the turtleback like the Hipper and the Prinz Eugen. And so in close combat situations, she will be able to potentially mitigate Citadel hits that other cruisers in other nations would not be able to tolerate. But again, this ship is not going to be nearly as tanky as her cousins, the other tier 8 German cruisers. I'm going to finish off the Tashkent here in a moment. You can really see the rate of fire that's going on here. No, I haven't talked about my build yet. I am using Günther Lütjens from my Hindenburg. So when I hit that 140 main battery hit shell mark, which I will in this match, it will activate Iron Strike. That in combination with Adrenaline Rush can give some pretty stupid reload rates, and we will see examples of that late in the match. Okay, so a few other things to touch on. I mentioned her survivability. She has slightly fewer hit points than the Hipper and the Prinz Eugen, and because she does not have a repair party consumable, she's not going to get any of her health back. I'm already seeing comments in various forums about people saying, oh, I wish she had the repair party. Frankly, I think a Mainz with a repair party at tier 8 would probably be overpowered. The Prinz Eugen has that because they want to draw a distinction that she's sort of the sturdiest of the tier 8 cruisers, but she has a relatively low reload, so she's not sort of this constant DPM stream that the Mainz is going to be, as I'm going to be putting continuous fire on this Des Moines. Let's see, what else can we talk about here? Okay, I mentioned the artillery, 12 150 millimeter guns. These are the same guns that are on the Nuremberg with some slight differences. They are better armored than what is on the Nuremberg. In fact, during the first round of testing, the ship was released as I finish off the Des Moines. Unfortunately, it's going to get another few AP shells into me here. When the ship was originally put out for testing for the first round, she had identical turrets and shell ballistics to the Nuremberg, and that posed a couple of problems. First of all, the turrets are not, the Nuremberg turrets are not very survivable at these upper tiers, so Wargaming improved the armor of the turrets for the Mainz. And the other key change that they made to the guns are they improved the ballistics. So for those of you familiar with playing the Nuremberg, you know that these shells are pretty light. They are rail guns out of the barrels, but they lose velocity due to air drag and distance. And so once you get out to 14, 15 kilometers, things start getting pretty floaty. And they're not as bad as like US Navy type shells, but they get floatier than the Soviets. And they're probably more like the French in that regard, in terms of their time to target at long range. And so Wargaming improved the shell ballistics for the Mainz over the Nuremberg, giving them faster out of the barrel firing at 960 meters per second, which is very fast. And they reduce the air drag on the shells so that they get to targets a little faster at these longer ranges. But you can kind of tell here as I'm firing on this Des Moines at over 15 kilometers that, things are getting a little floaty. It's playable. It's not like really aggravating, but they're not going to be as fast as if you're shooting at something that's within, let's say, like 10 kilometers. Okay, I mentioned the AP performance, highest alpha at caliber, but the penetration angles are pretty finicky. HE performance, you're going to penetrate up to 38 millimeters out of the box. And that's without IFHE, thanks to the 1/4 penetration buff. And that means that you're going to penetrate all of those 32 millimeter surfaces on even upper tier battleships. And that includes some surfaces that exist at 38 millimeters, like the decks of upper tier U.S. Navy battleships. So this ship does not require IFHE, Again, it will be a waste to invest in it because while it will increase the penetration to the upper 40s, there are very few armor surfaces on any ships that are above 38 and below 50. There's a few 45s, like some of the parts of the Roma, the Gneisenau, but that's a lot of specialization for reducing your fire chance. Okay, torpedo systems are also a little different. So the Hipper, the Prinz Eugen, the York, the Nuremberg, the Königsberg, people familiar with these ships know that they have 2 sets of triple launchers on each side. The Mainz gets 2 sets of quadruple launchers, so she gets the same torpedo systems as the Hindenburg. They have a reload of 90 seconds, but they otherwise are the same performance as basically all of the other mid and upper tier German cruisers. They have 13.7K alpha. They're detected at 1.3 kilometers. They go 6 kilometers. They're 64 knots. There's no need to buff the torpedo systems in any way. They're still very good torpedoes for ambush situations, and we will actually see an example of that in the second part of the gameplay review. Okay, AA, she is the best. I think I may have mentioned this. She has the best AA of the 3 tier-VIII German cruisers. And I did mention this. The main difference is the continuous AA is about 30% better than on the Prinz Eugen and on the Hipper. AA nowadays, I think, is generally regarded as pretty mediocre across the board anyway. There isn't a whole lot of value, in my opinion, beefing up the AA beyond what you already get. And so you'll be able to defend yourself reasonably well against tier-VIII tier-VIII carriers. Tier-VI carriers probably will have 0 chance against you, and tier-10 carriers will probably do pretty well with a skilled player. So let's see, maneuverability I mentioned, she's pretty slow, which is again typical of German cruisers. Rudder shift is pretty mediocre. You will definitely want to take steering gears modification 1 upgrade in slot 4 to give you some better rudder shift. But again, these are characteristics typical of the German cruisers. There I have activated Iron Strike, and that in combination with the fact that I'm down to about a quarter health means that my reload now is for about 4.5 seconds, which is for a 12 gun, HE buffed, high AP alpha light cruiser is kind of scary. And this is going to be part of the reason also that because of this very high rate of fire, that she, I think, is going to be a very good destroyer killer. She will need to play from range most time during the battle, but in late game situations, if you're hunting destroyers in order to get them off the map, in order to win games, this is where she can be very effective. Now, finally, I need to mention the concealment. She is the most poorly concealed of the 3 tier-VIII German cruisers, and unfortunately, that is saying a fair amount because German cruisers, upper tier German cruisers, tend to have pretty terrible concealment. In fact, I have a double fire here. I don't think I'm going to damage control this. I'm not sure why. I am going to finish off the Des Moines, and we're going to transition to the other part of the replay. But yeah, they have. She has 12 kilometer detection at best, which is pretty terrible. And so you're definitely going to want to be playing from range. Okay, so I've transitioned to the latter end of the 3rd battle I had with her. I'll leave the results for both of these battles at the end of the video so that you can look at the details. But definitely felt like I was getting my money's worth out of these ships. So the first engagement here is with basically a full health Shimakaze. Now, to be fair to the Shimakaze player, I wasn't being as alert to the fact that he had actually entered the cap or I didn't notice early enough. And he made the mistake of revealing himself. So I've gotten a few salvos off. I've already chunked him down to about a third of his remaining health. A couple of these shots are not as well aimed as I could have been. I obviously am using the superior German Hydro. She does have best in-game hydro. She matches the 6-kilometer ship detection range of the other tier 8 and upper tier German cruisers. So you are definitely going to want to use the German hydro here. And I'm going to finish off the Shimakaze. He's going to set me on fire, but again, I don't know why I don't damage con this right away. I don't know if I was the stress of having to try to torpedo beat these torpedoes. If he had hit me with one of these, it wouldn't have mattered if I had used my damage control, because the alpha would have killed me anyway. So a few minutes later, I'm headed back to this cap, and I detect the divisioned Kitakaze. The Kitakaze that was divisioned with that Shimakaze. My hydro is just about to go down. I put my plane up in order to try to keep the Kitakaze lit after my hydro goes down. The Kitakaze, being a pretty good AA destroyer, does shoot down my plane, so I've lost visibility on him. I'm going to send one set of torpedoes from each side in the event that he tries to push around the corner here. But he's not going to do that. In fact, we're going to proximity detect each other across this island. You can see Lynn Wilkie and the Prince Eugen in the Bravo cap, trying to get the cap here. We did obviously have a good lead, and then our team started to try to win harder, and Lynn and I are working with our Soyuz to try to wrap up this game. So we do there, like I said, I did proximity detect the Kitakaze, but I'm going to glide into the cap here, and I need to do everything I can to keep the island between myself and the destroyer. Now, what I don't understand is the Kitakaze clearly has to know that I'm very low health. He should just charge around the corner and fire a salvo at me and finish me off. But he isn't going to do that. I'm not sure why. But I'm going to stay here, get the cap. My plane and my hydro are about to come off cooldown again, and I will activate those as soon as I can. In fact, Lynn was laughing because I was so desperate to get the hydro back up and the plane back up. He could hear me clicking on the keyboard as soon as the consumables would come off cooldown to get them started again. Just so I could try to see where the destroyer was. Lynn was detected, so he knew that the Kitakaze was still in a position that the island was between us. There I do detect the Kitakaze with my plane, and my plane goes down, but my hydro is going to come off cooldown here. I do get the cap, which is cool. Get some solo capping in, and then I'm going to glide around the corner, and this time use my torpedo systems to try to take down the Kitakaze, which in fact will be successful. So first one I'm going to send both of these short because I can expect that the Kitakaze is going to turn in toward the island to make his run on me. And as luck would have it, he is going to run into one torpedo from each set of that I send over here. There's the first one, and then the second one will finish him off, and we win the game. So that was the second match. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to transition to the port where we can take a look at some more specific details of the ship. All right, here we are back in port with the Mainz in the Fjords port, actually. This is, I think, rapidly becoming among the favorite ports in the game by many in the community. This is a really lovely port that was added as part of the 091 or 092 upgrade, or update, I should say. Although I imagine there's probably a little bit of controversy, especially among more old-timers, to see a German ship parked in a Norwegian fjord. But that aside, let's go ahead and talk a little bit more about this ship. So I talked about the armor layout. So she has a 25 millimeter bow, and her upper armor belt is 25 millimeters, whereas these regions are 27 millimeters on both the Hipper and the Prince Eugen. And again, this will prevent her from being able to bow tank the 380 and 381 millimeter AP shells from a lot of battleships at mid and upper tiers. Now, she does have this 40 millimeter fore and armor belt, sometimes referred to as an icebreaker belt. So if in the event that you're, sort of bow on or well angled, and any battleship AP, including the Yamato, if it were to hit this bell at a strong angle, it would not be able to overmatch and it would bounce. But given that the majority of the bow surface above the water is the 25 millimeter, that is it's purely going to be RNG, whether you're going to be able to bounce shells off of that lower plate. I mentioned that her turtleback is the same. In fact, there is actually an important distinction between the turtleback on the Hipper and the Prinz Eugen. In fact, let me switch to the Tier 8 German cruisers here. The Hippers has a slightly less armored turtleback. She has a 30 millimeter plate. So that's this slope here. This is the turtleback, and it's 30 millimeters, which means that it will be overmatched by larger caliber AP shells, like above 430 millimeters from the Republic, obviously the Yamato, the Kremlin, Ohio, Georgia, and so on. However, both the Prinz Eugen and the Mainz receive a 40 millimeter plate for their Citadel, so they are more likely to be able to mitigate Citadel hits. Now, even just keep in mind that, again, a couple of things. First off, shells that do bounce off the turtleback will still stick in the ship, and you will still take a penetrating damage. But it is possible to mitigate Citadel hits both from cruisers and battleships in close combat. The German cruisers, in general, have relatively poor horizontal protection, and so they are more likely in plunging fire situations that are coming through the deck to take Citadel hits than some of their peers. But in close quarters, the turtleback can provide better protection. Yeah, so that's the armor. Let me go ahead and get to the build. So I am using Günther Lütjens from my Hindenburg. There are a couple of things that I probably would do differently for the skills if I were to have a dedicated commander for the Mainz. So the main skill I would call out here that's in question would be Expert Marksman. The Mainz does not require this. Her base turret rotation, 180 degrees and 23.6 seconds. That's the same as on the Nuremberg. She does not require Expert Marksman. Her turrets will keep up with her quite easily in a full turn. So this skill for sure you probably do not need. You could also argue you may not need Superintendent. I use this on the Hindenburg for an extra charge of the repair party consumable. But for ships that don't have repair party, I rarely get to use more than 3 charges of planes or hydro. And so depending upon your playstyle, you may feel like a superintendent skill may not be required. And then there's an argument to be made that maybe you don't need expert loader. Now, I have normally take expert loader on all of my cruisers because being able to switch to a different armor type, especially to AP, when you catch a broadside target that could be easily punished by using AP, you want to be able to switch to that armor, to that shell type very easily and very quickly. And so I generally recommend this skill on basically every cruiser in the game that can carry both AP and HE, or even the Italian cruisers. Now, so if you are working with a lower point captain, let's say you start with a 10-point captain for the ship, the core 4 skills I would take are Priority Target, Adrenaline Rush, Demolition Expert, and Concealment Expert. Some players may prefer to take Superintendent over Demolition Expert. Again, I generally don't use the additional charge of consumables in most games, but that's me. If you find that you regularly do, then Superintendent may be a better choice over Demolition Expert. I like Demolition Expert because I want to increase the chance of fires. The German cruisers tend to have pretty poor fire chance. In fact, if we look at the artillery here, the base fire chance is 8%, which is not very good. Soviet cruisers tend to be more 9-10%. Japanese cruisers are obviously higher than that. So she, in my opinion, definitely benefits from Demolition Expert. And then the reason it's 11% here is not only do I have Demolition Expert, but I also have the 2 combat signals that increase fire chance, the Victor Lima and the India X-ray signals. That, like I said, the core 4, Priority Target, Adrenaline Rush, Demo Expert, or Superintendent, depending upon what you prefer, and then Concealment. After that, I probably would go with Expert Loader, preventative maintenance. Jack of all trades is great to reduce the cooldown time on your consumables. That definitely worked to my advantage, as you could probably tell in that second part of the gameplay. Another choice that might be useful as a level 2 skill for the Mainz is Last Stand. As embarrassing as it sounds, the tier 8 German cruisers seem to have a reputation for having their engines knocked out more readily than some of their peers. I don't know why. So if you find that your engine and or rudder are routinely knocked out, or knocked out more often than you would like, this might be a good alternate as a tier 2 skill for the Mainz, in case you have a dedicated commander. But the reason I am using Günther Lütjens is because of the Iron Strike talent. So after 140 main battery hits, the reload is improved by 7.5%. On the Mainz, with its very high rate of fire, getting to that 140 main battery hits is pretty much a cakewalk. In fact, my colleague Lynn Wilkie and I were laughing that maybe the ship just should come, when you enter into battle, you just automatically get this talent activated on the Mainz because the rate of fire is so good. Again, in combination with Adrenaline Rush, you can get some very scary reload rates, well below 5 seconds, which is, like I said, is pretty significant for a light cruiser with this many rifles. So those were the main things I think I wanted to touch on. Oh, no, let me go over to upgrades. Sorry, almost forgot. So premium consumables, wherever you can afford them. If you can't, if you can only afford one, take the damage control party to reduce the cooldown time on your damage control. That would be, if you, like I said, if you could only afford one. But otherwise, try to do premium consumables for everything if you can. Upgrades. So main armaments modification 1. This protects your main battery, your torpedo systems, with very few exceptions other than carriers and maybe some very select battleship situations. This is kind of the standard for all ships in the game. For slot 2, if you are willing to spend the 17,000 coal, and it's a little more than 12,000 with a coupon, get the hydroacoustic search modification 1 upgrade. You do have best in game hydro, and extending the action time of this consumable can make you even that more potent, especially in late game situations where you're charging destroyers or trying to take them out, and giving yourself and your teammates some protection, or at least some awareness of the torpedoes earlier than possible. The third slot, I traditionally have taken the AA Guns modification 1 for most cruisers at mid and upper tiers, but AA nowadays is not very good. I know that there are probably quite a few carrier players that might disagree with that, but I think the general consensus of the community, including many in the community contributors, feel that AA is really kind of pretty lackluster. So tighten up your salvos with the aiming systems. Again, you don't need to improve your turret rotation with main battery modification 2. So aiming systems here is really, in my opinion, the better choice. I mentioned earlier, rudder shift is terrible, or really pretty terrible. So steering gears modification 1 is the choice for the ship. And then lastly, obviously, concealment. You want to maximize your concealment. These ships are big, they're easy targets to hit, and they have among the worst concealment of cruisers, or in fact, they are the worst, most poorly concealed tier 8 cruisers in the game. So you definitely want to maximize your concealment. So those are the upgrades. Last thing real quickly, signals, in case you're wanting to burn signals. The 5 I would recommend, combat signals. November Foxtrot to reduce the cooldown time on your consumables. Sierra Mike, improve your speed. That gets her speed up to 33.6 knots, which again isn't very fast, but it's better than the 32. You'll keep up with your battleships, but you'll be outpaced by pretty much all of your tier 8 cruiser peers from other nations. Take the 2 signals that improve your fire chance. So India X-Ray and Victor Lima. And lastly, the all-important Juliet Charlie signal to eliminate the chance of detonation. I have the luxury of having a lot of signals. Some players don't have that benefit, I understand. But if you do have the signals, especially if you're going into a competitive arena like clan battles or ranked, signals are the place to use. And the most important one is the Juliet Charlie signal. So to wrap up my review of this premium tier 8 German light cruiser Mainz, I am indeed thrilled and very happy to have her in my port. I do expect that she's going to grow on me very quickly, although I do need to remember also to not get into some of the same engagements with her as I might be comfortable in the Prinz Eugen, since she does not have the same durability or endurance, but otherwise I think this ship is going to be a lot of fun to play. I hope you found the review useful for you in case you are interested in potentially buying her or just want to know more about her. Please do leave your comments below and any questions that you may have. I do read all comments and I am happy to answer any questions to the best of my ability. And with that, and as always, we hope to see you out there on the virtual seas, and we wish you happy sailing.